All right, let's get right into it. Today we're diving deep into all things habits with Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh yeah, James Clear. This is a good one.
Yeah, it's like my copy. I don't know if you can see this,
Yeah.
but it is just full of highlights and notes
Yeah.
because it is so packed with useful advice and information.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to try to bring you the best of the best in this deep dive today.
Yeah, it really is like the habit Bible. It breaks it down in such a way that you can actually apply this stuff.
Exactly. We don't want to just read about it.
Yeah.
We want to make changes in our lives.
Totally.
And one of the things that I found really interesting is this idea of the plateau of latent potential.
Uh-huh.
You know that feeling where you're putting in the effort, but you're not seeing the results yet.
Oh yeah, like you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah. And, you start to think, like, is this even working?
Right. You feel like you're getting nowhere.
And Clear uses this analogy of an ice cube,
Uh-huh.
where you're applying heat to this ice cube, but it's not melting. It's not until it hits 32 degrees
Yeah.
that it starts to actually change state.
Exactly. And it's so easy to get discouraged during that period before the breakthrough because it feels like all your effort is going to waste.
Right. You feel like giving up.
But what Clear emphasizes is that those early efforts, even though they might not be visible, are actually laying the groundwork for those big changes.
Yeah, you're building the foundation.
Exactly. You're setting the stage.
I love that because it makes you feel like even those times when you felt like you were failing, you're actually making progress.
Totally. You were making progress. You just couldn't see it yet.
Yeah, and that ties in nicely with another one of my favorite points in the book, which is those British researchers he talks about.
Yeah.
The ones who found that people who made very specific plans about when and where they would exercise,
Right.
they were way more likely to actually do it.
Much more likely to follow through.
Have you ever tried to form a new habit? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to meditate more or I'm going to read more, but you don't really have a plan in place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah, it just kind of fizzles out.
It's like setting yourself up for failure.
And Clear calls these implementation intentions,
Right?
where you turn a vague goal like meditate more
Yeah.
into a concrete plan.
Exactly. You have to get specific. So instead of just saying, I'll meditate more, you say, I'll meditate for 10 minutes every morning at 7 a.m. in my living room.
So you're basically making a reservation with yourself.
Yeah. You're pre-committing to the habit.
It's like scheduling it in your calendar.
Exactly.
So you can't just blow it off.
And this actually connects to another really cool idea from the book, which is identity-based habits.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
So the basic idea is that every action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
I like that.
Hmm?
So if I eat a healthy meal, I'm casting a vote for a healthy me.
Exactly. And if you hit the snooze button, instead of going for that run, you're casting a vote for sleepyhead me.
And I have definitely cast my fair share of votes for procrastinator me over the years.
We've all been there. But the point is that you have the power to choose which identity you're strengthening with each decision.
So it's not just about changing your habits.
Right.
It's about changing your identity.
Exactly. It's a mindset shift.
Yeah. And when you start thinking about your actions as votes,
Yeah,
it really makes you more conscious of the choices you're making.
totally. It makes you think twice before indulging in that bad habit because you realize you're essentially voting against the person you want to be.
That's powerful stuff. Now let's talk about how habits actually work.
Okay.
Because once we understand the mechanics of habits,
Right.
then we can start to hack the system.
Exactly. We can use that knowledge to our advantage.
And that's where the habit loop comes in.
Okay.
Clear breaks down every habit into this 4-step pattern: cue, craving, response, reward.
Uh-huh.
So let's say I have a habit of checking my phone every time I get a notification.
Okay.
The cue is the notification sound.
The trigger.
The craving is that urge to see what the notification's about.
Mhm. The curiosity.
The response is me picking up my phone and checking it.
And the reward is satisfying that curiosity.
Yeah. And maybe seeing something funny or interesting online.
Exactly.
But the key here is that once you understand this loop,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to break bad habits
Right.
or reinforce good ones.
Totally. You can manipulate the different stages of the loop.
So if I want to break my phone checking habit,
Okay.
I could try to remove the cue by turning off notifications.
That would make a big difference.
Or I could try to make the reward less appealing.
How would you do that?
Maybe limiting my social media time or uninstalling some of the apps that are most distracting.
That's a good strategy.
And on the flip side, if I want to build a good habit,
Uh-huh.
I could make the reward more satisfying
Right.
or link it to an existing habit.
So give me an example.
Okay, so let's say I want to start flossing regularly.
Okay.
I could bundle that with brushing my teeth, which is already an established habit.
So you're piggybacking on an existing habit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I brush my teeth. I floss. And then I get that nice, clean feeling as my reward.
I like it. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I actually used this strategy to break a bad habit recently.
Oh, really? Tell me about it.
I used to mindlessly snack in the evenings.
Okay.
And I realized that the cue was walking past the pantry after dinner.
So the pantry was the trigger.
Yeah. And I just couldn't resist those chips and cookies calling my name.
The temptation was too strong.
So I started taking a different route after dinner.
You removed the cue.
Exactly.
Mm.
And just like that, the urge to snack diminished significantly.
That's a great example of how understanding the habit loop can help you make real changes in your life.
And it's not about being perfect.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
about making small adjustments.
Like one step at a time.
Now let's talk about how to make those good habits even more enticing.
Okay.
Because let's be honest, sometimes doing the right thing isn't always the most fun.
No, it's not always easy.
So how do we make those healthy habits more appealing? And that's where temptation bundling comes in.
Oh, yeah. Temptation bundling. This is a good one.
I love this concept. It's all about linking an activity you need to do with an activity you want to do.
Exactly. You pair something you enjoy with something you don't.
So for example,
Okay.
let's say you hate doing laundry,
Ugh, I hate doing laundry.
but you love listening to podcasts.
Oh, yeah, I could listen to podcasts all day.
So you could make a rule that you only allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast while you're folding laundry.
So you're essentially bribing yourself to do the chore.
Exactly. And it works because you're associating something you enjoy
Yeah.
with something you previously dreaded.
That's brilliant. I'm going to try that.
Now, this next concept really blew my mind. Clear shares this story about Vietnam War veterans
Okay.
who used heroin overseas.
Wow.
But when they returned home, 9 out of 10 of them quit almost overnight.
That's incredible. How is that even possible?
It's because they were no longer surrounded by the same triggers and cues.
So it was the environment that was driving the addiction.
Exactly. Back home, they weren't facing the same stress and trauma of war.
Right.
They weren't surrounded by other soldiers who were also using,
Makes sense.
and they didn't have easy access to the drug.
So their environment changed and their habits changed along with it.
It's a powerful example of how much our surroundings influence our behavior.
It's amazing. I never thought about it that way.
And it means that we can strategically design our environment
Uh-huh.
to support the habits we want to build.
So it's not just about willpower. It's about setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. And this applies to breaking bad habits too.
Okay.
If you're constantly surrounded by temptations,
Yeah.
it's going to be much harder to resist them.
So you have to make those bad choices harder to make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to eat healthier,
Okay.
don't keep junk food in the house.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. Make it less convenient to indulge in those unhealthy snacks.
I like that. It's about removing the obstacles.
Yeah, I'm thinking something here.
Oh.
I can be my own worst enemy when it comes to building new habits.
How so?
I tend to overcomplicate things.
Okay.
I make things way too hard for myself.
I think we're all guilty of that sometimes.
Yeah, and that's why I love Clear's 2-minute rule.
Oh, yeah, the 2-minute rule. This is a game changer.
It's so simple, but so effective.
Tell me about it.
It's all about breaking down a new habit
Okay.
into a version that takes less than 2 minutes to do.
So instead of saying, I'm going to run a marathon, you start with, I'm going to put on my running shoes.
Exactly. Or instead of saying, I'm going to write a novel, you start with, I'm going to write for 2 minutes.
The point is to just get started.
Yeah, because once you overcome that initial inertia,
Right.
it's much easier to keep going.
It's like that saying, objects in motion tend to stay in motion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the 2-minute rule is all about getting the ball rolling.
And building momentum.
Now, even once you started a new habit,
Uh-huh.
how do you actually make it stick?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's where the final piece of the habit loop comes in,
Okay.
making it satisfying.
Ah, yes. The reward.
Because we're wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Totally. Our brains are hardwired that way.
So we need to find ways to make those good habits feel good.
So we associate them with positive feelings.
Exactly. And Clear shares some great examples of how to do this.
Like what?
One of my favorites is the idea of using a habit tracker.
Oh, yeah, habit trackers. These can be really helpful.
It could be as simple as a calendar where you mark off each day you complete your habit.
Or you could use one of those fancy apps.
Yeah, there are tons of great apps out there.
And it's so satisfying to see that visual representation of your progress.
It's like giving yourself a gold star for good behavior.
Exactly. It's a way to celebrate your wins and stay motivated.
Now, before we move on to the next section, I want to talk about something really important.
Okay.
Goodhart's law.
Goodhart's law. That's an interesting one.
It's basically the idea that when a measure becomes a target,
Uh-huh.
it ceases to be a good measure.
So you're saying we shouldn't focus too much on the numbers?
Exactly. Because when we get too fixated on a specific metric,
Yeah.
we might start taking shortcuts or
Yeah.
making decisions that aren't actually aligned with our goals.
So it's about finding the right balance.
Right. It's about using data as a tool for self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
but not letting it become the driving force behind our actions.
That's a good point. I think we've all been guilty of that at some point.
Yeah, like obsessing over getting 10,000 steps a day,
Right.
even if it means walking around our living room at midnight.
When you should be sleeping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or focusing solely on calorie counting
Uh-huh.
without paying attention to the nutritional value of the food we're eating.
So it's about keeping the bigger picture in mind.
Right. We don't want to lose sight of our overall goals.
And that's a great segue into our next topic, which is all about the importance of identity and purpose.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into that.
But first, let's take a quick break. And we'll be right back with more insights from Atomic Habits. Welcome back. All right, so before the break, we were talking about this idea of identity and purpose and how it all ties into building better habits.
Yeah, it's like we were saying, our habits are a reflection of who we believe we are.
Exactly. And if we want to change our habits, we need to start by changing our beliefs about ourselves.
So it's an inside-out approach.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's about working on the inner game.
And that's where this concept of explore-exploit trade-off comes in.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So in the early stages of any pursuit, there's this natural period of exploration.
Uh-huh. Like when you're first learning a new skill.
Exactly. You're trying things out, experimenting, seeing what works.
It's like you're casting a wide net,
Yeah. You're gathering information.
trying to find your sweet spot.
And then after a while, you start to shift into exploitation.
Okay, so you're narrowing your focus.
Right. You're honing in on the areas where you have the most potential.
And investing your energy there.
Exactly. It's about doubling down on your strengths.
So it's not about being good at everything.
No. It's about being great at a few things.
Find your lane and dominate it.
I love that. Now, Clear quotes cartoonist Scott Adams in this chapter.
Ah, yeah, Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert.
And Adams says that everyone has at least a few areas in which they could be in the top 25% with some effort.
That's encouraging. It means that we all have the potential to excel in something.
We just need to figure out what that something is.
And then put in the work.
So what are some areas where you think you excel?
That's a good question. I've always been good with numbers, and I enjoy solving problems.
So maybe a career in finance or engineering would be a good fit?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Or maybe something that combines both of those interests.
There you go. You're already thinking like an exploiter.
Huh. I guess I am. But even once you've found your niche,
Yeah.
there's still the challenge of staying motivated over the long term.
Because even the things we love can start to feel like a grind sometimes.
Totally. It's easy to get bored or burned out.
So how do we keep the spark alive?
Well, Clear talks about the need for variable rewards.
Variable rewards, like those surprise bonuses you get at work.
Exactly. It's about introducing an element of unpredictability.
So it's not just about the destination.
Right.
It's about enjoying the journey along the way.
And keeping things interesting.
Okay, so how do we apply this to our habits?
Well, one way is to simply mix things up.
Like trying to do workout class.
Or listening to a different genre of music.
Or taking a different route to work.
Exactly. It's about keeping your brain guessing.
Preventing boredom from setting in.
And making things more fun.
I like it.
Yeah.
Now, what about those days when you just don't feel like doing anything?
Ah, yes. The motivation slump.
We all have those moments when even our favorite habits feel like a chore.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how do we push through those times?
Well, Clear makes this distinction between amateurs and professionals.
Okay, I'm listening.
Amateurs let their emotions dictate their actions.
So if they don't feel like it, they don't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas professionals show up consistently regardless of how they're feeling.
It's about discipline over motivation.
And that's where the power of identity comes back in.
Okay. I'm starting to see the connection.
If you see yourself as a writer,
Uh-huh.
then you're more likely to write even when you don't feel like it.
Because it's part of who you are.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not just something you do.
It's part of your identity.
Now, Clear also talks about the importance of reflection and review.
Oh, yeah. This is crucial.
It's about taking a step back
Uh-huh.
and assessing what's working.
And what's not working.
Right. And making adjustments as needed.
It's like running an experiment on yourself
Exactly. You're constantly tweaking the variable.
to optimize your results.
And Clear shares some great examples of how high performers use this approach.
Like who?
Well, the LA Lakers used a program called career best effort,
Okay.
to track all sorts of data about their players.
Like their shooting percentages and their rebounding stats?
Yeah, and even their sleep patterns.
Wow. They really went all out.
And even Olympic athletes keep detailed journals to analyze their diet, their mindset.
So they're looking for patterns and insights.
Exactly. They're constantly learning and evolving.
That's impressive. It shows a real commitment to improvement.
Now, it's not just about crunching numbers.
Right.
It's also about taking the time to reflect on your experiences.
Both the successes and the failures.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what worked well, what didn't, and what can I learn from this
It's like having a debriefing session with yourself
after each mission?
so you can strategize for the next one.
This has been such a great discussion about building better habits.
I agree. We've covered so much ground.
But there's one more crucial element we need to explore.
Okay. What's that?
The role of emotions.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Because how we feel about our habits
Mm-hmm.
can have a huge impact on whether or not we stick with them.
Absolutely. So let's dive into that in the next part.
Stay tuned, folks, because we're going to get to the heart of what makes habits truly stick. Okay, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into atomic habits. And this time, we're talking about feelings.
Yeah, emotions.
Mm.
They play a bigger role in habit formation than we might think.
It's true.
Mm.
We can have all the logic and willpower in the world. But if a habit doesn't feel good,
Right.
it's going to be tough to stick with it in the long run.
It's like trying to force yourself to eat broccoli every day when all you really want is pizza.
Yeah, exactly. And Clear talks about this in the book, that feeling when you finally achieve a goal, you get that surge of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But then, almost immediately, a new desire pops up.
You're on to the next thing.
We're on this hedonic treadmill, always chasing after the next hit of dopamine.
It's the anticipation, the craving that really drives us.
So it's not just about reaching the destination, it's about enjoying the journey.
Exactly. And that's where things can get tricky, because sometimes the things that are good for us in the long run
Yeah.
don't always feel good in the moment.
Like eating a salad versus indulging in a big bowl of pasta.
Or waking up early for a run versus hitting that snooze button.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we make those good habits feel more satisfying?
Well, Clear talks about the power of reframing our associations,
Okay.
like changing the way we think about those habits.
Exactly. Instead of viewing exercise as a chore,
Uh-huh.
we can focus on the feeling of getting stronger or the endorphin rush we get afterward.
Or instead of dreading our morning meditation,
Right.
we can savor that sense of calm and focus it brings.
It's about highlighting the positive aspects of even those habits that might not seem so enjoyable at first glance.
So we're basically tricking our brains into wanting to do the right thing.
In a way, yes. But it's more than just a trick. It's about shifting our perspective.
And aligning our actions with our values.
Exactly. Because
Right.
when we believe in what we're doing,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to stick with it, even when things get tough.
It's like our identity becomes our anchor, keeping us grounded when the waves of emotion are trying to pull us off course. That's a great analogy. So we've talked a lot about strategies and techniques, but what about those days when you just don't feel like doing anything?
Yeah, those days are the worst.
It happens to all of us. But remember the difference between professionals and amateurs.
Professionals show up no matter what,
Exactly. They don't let their feelings dictate their actions.
because they know that motivation is fleeting.
It comes and goes.
So instead of waiting for inspiration to strike, they
Yeah.
create systems and routines that help them stay on track no matter what.
It's about discipline over motivation.
And building that discipline takes practice.
It's like a muscle.
Yeah.
You have to train it.
So start small.
Yeah.
Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight.
Yeah. One habit at a time.
And make it so easy you can't say no.
Like putting on your workout clothes.
Or opening your meditation app.
Exactly. Just get started, and the rest will follow.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through Atomic Habits.
I agree. We've covered so much ground.
And I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore. But I think we've given our listeners a great foundation.
Yeah, a solid starting point for building better habits.
And remember, building better habits isn't about being perfect.
It's about making small, consistent changes
That compound over time.
and ultimately lead to a better life.
So what's one small habit you can commit to today?
What's one tiny change you can make that will move you closer to the person you want to become?
Think about it. Write it down. Make a plan. And take action.
Because even the smallest step in the right direction
Can make a world of difference.
That's it for this deep dive into atomic habits.
Thanks for joining
I'll
us.
see you next time.